So are there any questions? I'm hoping there are. Rich?
Yes, my first question is to Marco. With respect to healthcare today, if you're just regular individual in a urbanized area and you feel sick and you go to the hospital, is that publicly funded?
Well, if you go to a public hospital in any of the cities in China, you can go in, you can take a number, you have to wait for 8 hours before you see a doctor. The current practice has been you have a little red pocket and facilitate the process if you want to get ahead of the line. But at the same time, if you can afford it, you go to the VIP section. So they're being charged a little bit. That just, in a nutshell, I'm not really describing everything that happens.
And what's the record keeping around that? Is that robust or is it how that?
A lot of paperwork. I don't think a lot of them can be found later either. It's just, you know, when you have that much paper, it's very difficult.
So that in itself is a great opportunity.
The electronic medical record is something that they really have aspiration to.
And then final follow-up on that, I felt like a White House correspondent.
That's right.
One more question. Why do governments drive towards privatization? What forces that?
I'm not sure if I can answer that question. I think that there's a need among the people. And so in terms of privatization, you get more funding. I mean, it will allow people who has this wealth management fund, there's so much money sitting there that wants to invest. They want to really, they can bring in money and then throw in $200 million to say upgrade a children's hospital, where the government don't have that from the taxpayers. So that's the broad side. I don't think I am in the position to really talk about government reason. Sure. But the pool of money is there. There's enough probably behind the scene lobbying from all these major banking and money people that want to do something for something that's needed by the people.
I wanted to elaborate on the point that Marco made. Actually, this healthcare is going to be huge. It's understatement. The medical system, I guess, each citizen has a medical card.
Are you here in the back?
Can you hear it? I'll yell out loud. I think each citizen has a medical card, okay, partially funded annual basis by Beijing central government. Yeah, very small, but also funded by the the employer. It could be city and provincial government, but the key is it's a mess. So even for technology company, trying to help China revamping the medical card, that could be huge. Security, medical record. Now, number two, I think it's important to mention about the fact that is 30, 40 years ago, Chinese economy was driven by state-owned enterprises. Now, it's the reverse. It's small to medium-sized company driving China's future growth. Has been doing it the past 10 years. Even the SOEs, because of misallocation of capital funds, the government are really cracking down. It's getting rid of all the unprofitable divisions of state-owned enterprises. On the medical front, actually, I also want to elaborate. I think Marco mentioned assisted living. Even though property real estate is prohibited these days in China, in terms of it's difficult to get property real estate funding, loans. If you are involved in promoting healthy living, eco, you can basically get preferential treatment of, this is the real estate folks, really go into building assisted senior living. That's a huge opportunity. And actually, quite a number of US companies have, real estate firms already targeted that segment.
What about the environmental sector? There seems to be a lot of opportunity there to do some good work.
You know what, I'll leave it up to the other folks to comment. I don't want to mess up.
You want to talk about clean water, and I thought you should Mr. Chicken.
Yeah, I'll address that. I work with a number of environmental remediation companies, and when I ask them what markets they are targeting, within a nanosecond they say China. And that's because of the mounting cost of not only the capital dollars, but the human capital that is spoken about from the standpoint of health issues and concerns. Water technology is a very big opportunity in China right now. We work with several clients that are developing desalination technologies as well as other water treatment technologies that are testing them in China. One company that we work with is actually bypassing working with MIT to work with several universities in China on the implementation there. I think that tells the story.
So if one of these folks has a business and wants to go to China, is there money to be borrowed in China to start a business? How does that work? Tori?
Yes, just now in the case I show you, you can borrow both onshore and offshore for a foreign fund. But actually, if you do not have a local entity, you cannot borrow directly. But you have to have get local entity
Is that
to
local
borrow.
entity one that an American company can set up?
Yeah, well, American companies set up a local entity in China, so then you can borrow money.
Is it difficult?
It depends. It depends on how the credit of your company and the performance, and it depends on many factors.
Similar underwriting criteria like the U.S. has.
I'm not sure about the U.S. since I know nothing about the U.S. Yeah.
Maybe it's easier to get capital in China.
Well, actually, it's pretty difficult for small and medium-sized companies to obtain financing in China. There is no security laws in China. There is no bankruptcy remote law yet in China. So you probably know this. More importantly, for most Chinese banks, they rather lend to the big companies because you go through the same process of approving companies and looking at financial statements. Now, more importantly, this is an area that China, the government has been trying to encourage small to medium-sized and microfinance. So from that aspect, yes, about 30 new private banks have been established, and I believe more than half has been approved, including Alibaba and some of the big names. Now this is healthy. Certainly, I think this will create a better environment for the small and medium-sized company, including U.S. company operating in China, to tap into short-term financing. And keep in mind, this is very different. I mean, China has been involved in upgrading its financial banking system, and I believe the banking system is only a few years away from, I guess, meeting the global standards such as US and Western Europe.
Can I ask a question first? And since you live in China, okay? So if you have to go see a doctor and live in China, what would you do?
To see a doctor. You mean get money or?
No, I mean, so you go see a doctor in China. You go to the public hospital. Because one of the problems in China is the inpatient thing. They don't discharge the people. People with the flu, they go into the hospital, they stay there for, not forever, but then for many more days, before discharge. But say if I move back to China, if I have illness, I go to public hospital.
Yeah, sure.
What do I have to pay?
Well, depends on what kind of treatment.
Okay, say if I have a flu.
Flu, about 200 RMB.
So it is covered by insurance.
It depends what kind of insurance you have. For me, I have very good insurance. So
Because you work for a company that provides insurance. But if I just a normal, regular person.
normal regular person, but I think most of the people they have insurance. For example,
Company insurance.
the minimum the government will provide insurance to the rural people. For example, the lowest, the rural people, they can get about 50% covered.
50%.
Yeah.
But for you, if you go
For
to
me,
the hospital,
90% plus.
they pay by private insurance.
Yes.
So I think it answers some of the questions.
It does,
Because
right.
things keep changing in China, so you really have to take in where you are, who you are.
Right, one of the observations that have been made to me in discussing this, I have a software firm that operates, is it's very difficult to see when people come together. Forgetting about super advanced medical records, just like, who came last week and are they back, right? And that's what I was driving.
So we're gonna talk it offline.
Okay, no problem.
I just follow that, but see, right, I said, you may actually can share the most updated information. Okay.
It's so complex, I mean, the hookup system to get it.
Don't get
I
it.
mean, don't even get into it. Depends where you're from, what region, and then it's like that, it's so complex.
Any other questions? Yes,
One of the earlier speakers mentioned that the cost of making things in China is getting closer to what it is in the U.S. Later on, Mr. Chiefy talked about solar market growing in Georgia and Chinese product being offered at quite a differential. Can you comment or expand on that? What your opinion or assessment is why?
Yeah. Part of the reason why is it has to do, first of all, with the cost of, number one, the cost of labor, first of all, is a big component, still a big factor as well, too. And also, its material costs and raw material costs have actually been lower in the Chinese market overall, and that has factored into the production capability. Plus, what we found is that actually there is an ability to ship and produce faster in the Chinese manufacturing as well. I have a comparable situation in which a company ordered panels that were manufactured in California and panels that were manufactured in China. Those from China arrived 2 months earlier than those from California at a significantly lower cost as well. So that is merely anecdotal, but I think it's a rationale that's also playing out as far as a practice on a repeated basis.
there's also an established chain of supply. If you, for instance, I took the bullet train from Shanghai to Beijing, and you go through vast areas of farmland with these little villages. Some are converted from the settlement villages under Mao, some are new farming villages. Virtually every unit has a solar panel along the way. It's just the way you power up in these villages. So you have that supply chain already in place. To get something done, it's done much quicker.
Thank you.
The solar question, actually, I happen to know a little bit. What happened the last few years because of dumping issue? China, actually, solar company in China have gone through a difficult time. Actually, the lousy one has been gone. We did our LDK, Suntech, all the big ones are gone. That brings it more opportunity even for U.S. company. Even nowadays in China, there's a shortage sometimes in terms of supplying those panels. And number two being, I think U.S. still has the best technology on solar. I'm not an expert, but I know a little bit more. It's very costly to do well, I know U.S. has been also trying to develop a thin film processing where it will be less capital intensive, and they're working on it. Actually, even cooperation between China and U.S. There's a company called Solar Power, listed in NASDAQ, working closely with Jiangsu province, Wuxi area, trying to develop. So there's huge opportunities for cooperation. Keep in mind, it's not a win-win. I think 1 + 1, it could be 3 or 5. And the next 10 years, it's going to be energy efficient. And actually, the government has already put together. It will become effective, fully enforced, a penalty tax on producers.
Yes, ma'am.
This is for John. What exactly would it take for you to come to Georgia?
I feel I've been set up today. I only started knowing this, I actually, Fang is coming, my good friend, whom I have known for 20 years, but most of all, somehow a miracle, and my wife offered to come here with me today, so she's the boss. She prefers the big cities. I'm a small town boy.
John, is she here in the audience?
Huh?
Is she here now?
Yes, actually, so be,
Okay. Everybody, please stand for
thank you. But actually, if you don't mind, let me just have 1 minute to add a little bit more to the comment that, about the cost of
You have to push the button.
about the cost of production. The conventional wisdom has been that the Chinese company come to the U.S. to acquire company either for market access, for brand name, for something else. But at least from our small perspective, what we see is that the clients that we work with are coming here because they think that by doing this in the US, their cost of production can actually go lower in this part of the world than their hometown China. And we opened this office in 2005. The first 4 or 5 years, we see Chinese company kicking tires. They kind of showed interest, but by the time we thought they were going to pull the trigger, then they just said, nah, we are not going to do it. We still feel much more comfortable operating in China because of the local operation environment, the government access, and everything else. But in recent years, again, all of our clients have almost, I would say 90% of them are private-owned Chinese companies. At the end of the day, it's whether you can do the math right. I mean, if they can do it more competitively here than China. For example, there was a company called Kia, which was in the film just now. $218 million investment, 500 jobs. It's a textile, for God's sake. And I thought we would never, I really had some doubts about the project before I went to see the chairman in March 2012. As we sitting in his office, he said, Mr. Lin, he said, he started going into the labor costs. He said in 2009, he was paying $250 a month to his production worker plus room and board. In 2012, he was paying $650, and he predict by 2016 he will be paying $900 plus in room and board. So I was thinking that in 2009, a textile worker in South Carolina was making 12 times more. In 2012, he was making 6, and by 2016, he could be making 3 to 4 times. But when you think about the land cost, the utility cost, the logistic cost. The logistic cost is an interesting thing because every American company, when they go to China, they would think the logistic cost would be much lower than in the US. But then they had a big surprise when they realized that the shipping cost or logistic cost in China could be 30 times more than what it will occur in the US. So I think the math start playing to our favor, but I want to keep on emphasizing that there are only a very small pocket of the US that are suitable for a Chinese investment project in production. And I typically don't mind saying that. I think for most part, the southern part of the U.S. are more competitive than other parts of the U.S. And there are a lot of choice, but still, I think it's very important that, a lot of my job has been, unlike many of my colleagues where, their project have been assigned to them and the clients already know this is something they want to explore or evaluate. But the Chinese project sometimes takes a lot of education. In many cases, they don't think they need to do that in the U.S. Because again, it's the most industrialized country in the world that's associated with high cost. And number two, because Chinese government has been emphasizing on environmental control or all those kind of things. So they think by coming to the US, there's no way they can do that here because environmental red tape or regulation will be such that that's prohibitive for them to do that. But once they learn more, for example, we are fixed to announce a $400 million project in composite material. And actually the chairman told me in the first meeting, he would never think US would be the one that they would do this because of environmental control or red tape. But as he understands, as we work with him along the process, he understands that it can happen, and actually their cost of starting such a project will be even lower than China. So, thank you.
That environmental cost comes with a human component. I know when Ray came here a year and a half ago, one of the first things she noticed, this is in the city of Atlanta, is how many stars you can see. And that's the truth. And it's because the skies in China from the cold and such are generally cloudy. So there's a balance that needs to be achieved. Anybody want to talk about that?
Well, I want to add to John's comment. It's very correct. I think the Southeast has a lot to offer to bring Chinese company. I think one area, certainly I would agree with this, I'm sure the tax experts will agree with me, is even as the corporate taxation is substantially higher. If you add up enterprise income tax, 25% max. By the way, free trade zones, some regions offer 50% concessionary rate. You have progressive individual income tax, 40-45% higher than us. You got value added taxes. I mean, everything up, you're looking at 60% or north of it in China. So there's certainly benefit of really in Southeast USA. So that